She didn't look like a threat. Just a black woman alone at a roadside rest stop, sunglasses on, tired from weeks of travel, reaching for a bottle of water from a rusty vending machine. But to the man who pulled up in a patrol car with a badge on his chest and prejudice in his bones, she was a problem to be solved. And so, without warning, he kicked her. But what he didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that he had just struck a match at the foot of a system built on dry lies and flammable silence. Leticia Ward had spent 20 years dismantling criminal networks and attending high-level strategy briefings with the Department of Justice. She had led operations that brought down human trafficking empires and exposed corruption, hiding in plain sight. But none of that mattered in that moment. Because to Officer Jack Kessler, she was just another face in a place he didn't think it belonged. It was a hot, cracked stretch of concrete off Highway 43, somewhere between nowhere and forgotten. Leticia had stopped for a drink, her black SUV the only vehicle near the oak tree in the corner of the lot. There was a vending machine humming beside a rust-stained restroom. A teenage boy with earbuds in sat nearby, unaware that history was about to unfold 10 feet from where he scrolled TikTok. She didn't hear the patrol car approach, she felt it. That specific hum, that slow grind of tires on gravel, deliberate and too close. Her hand had just wrapped around the cold bottle when the voice rang out behind her. "Where's the car from?" The officer barked. She turned, calm. "Kansas plates." Driving back to St. Louis, he stepped in. No greeting. No smile. Just suspicion masked as procedure. His eyes scanned her like he was building a reason to escalate. "Not many people from Kansas stop here," he said, voice thick with entitlement. Leticia didn't flinch. Didn't realize that was illegal. He asked for her license. She handed it over, deliberately skipping her badge, letting him assume whatever he wanted. Sometimes the truth needs room to reveal itself. Ward, he muttered, frowning. That name sounds familiar. Then came the blow. And a warning. No justification. His boot slammed into her shin, hard and precise, like pressing a button he'd pressed before. She fell. The water bottle clattered away, the pavement scraped her palms, and blood bloomed through torn fabric at her knee. "That's where you stay," he said flatly, walking away, but she didn't stay. Not in spirit. Not in silence. She rose slowly, pain anchoring her to the moment. And something inside her ignited. His boot slammed into her shin, hard and precise, like pressing a button he'd pressed before. She fell. The water bottle clattered away, the pavement scraped her palms, and blood bloomed through torn fabric at her knee. "That's where you stay," he said flatly, walking away, but she didn't stay. Not in spirit. Not in silence. She rose slowly, pain anchoring her to the moment. And something inside her ignited. His boot slammed into her shin, hard and precise, like pressing a button he'd pressed before. She fell. The water bottle clattered away, the pavement scraped her palms, and blood bloomed through torn fabric at her knee. "That's where you stay," he said flatly, walking away, but she didn't stay. Not in spirit. Not in silence. She rose slowly, pain anchoring her to the moment. And something inside her ignited. His boot slammed into her shin, hard and precise, like pressing a button he'd pressed before. She fell. The water bottle clattered away, the pavement scraped her palms, and blood bloomed through torn fabric at her knee. "That's where you stay," he said flatly, walking away, but she didn't stay. Not in spirit. Not in silence. She rose slowly, pain anchoring her to the moment. And something inside her ignited. This wasn't the first time America had asked a black woman to swallow injustice. but it might be the last time she did it quietly. Leticia didn't scream. She didn't beg. She didn't even glance back at the officer who had just kicked her down. Instead, she leaned against her SUV, pulled herself upright with quiet precision, and slipped her hand into the inner lining of her jacket. Not for a badge, not for a weapon, but for something far more dangerous to people like Jack Kessler, a phone with access to the truth.At wasn't just any phone. It was encrypted, unmarked, and loaded with a priority command line few even knew existed. Her fingers, though still trembling slightly from the pain, moved with trained certainty. A 3-digit code. A single contact. OCP. OCP. Please confirm authorization, said a voice on the line. Lady A. Ward. Code VFX79, Leticia said calmly. Initiate urgent background tasking. I want everything on Deputy Jack Kessler disciplinary records, patrol logs, complaint files. Extend search to the entire Crawford County Department, especially K-9 units and midday squads. Prioritize use of force reports. Request acknowledged, the voice responded. Processing time, 8 minutes. Leticia ended the call and exhaled slowly. Her knee throbbed beneath her, the blood soaking into her torn pant leg. But pain wasn't the enemy here, apathy was. And she was done tolerating it. A shadow moved at the edge of the lot. The boy. Thin, blonde, weary. He stood beside his bike, clutching his phone with white knuckles. When their eyes met, he didn't flinch. He walked toward her, phone outstretched. On the screen, the video. The kick. The impact. Kessler's voice. You filmed it? Leticia asked. He nodded, swallowing hard. I didn't know what to do. But I thought. It shouldn't just disappear. Leticia didn't smile, but something in her face softened. She handed him a small SD card from her wallet. Copy it here. Keep the original. And if anyone unfamiliar approaches you, send the file to this encrypted email, she said, handing him a note. Colby, right? Remember this moment. It matters. Once the transfer completed, Leticia secured the card in a safe magnetic case and tucked it deep into her jacket. She wasn't just protecting herself now, she was protecting evidence that could shake the very pillars of a crooked structure, but she wasn't done. 2 hours later, she sat in the back corner of a diner in Valley Junction, sipping black coffee and staring at a glowing laptop screen. The booth was dusty, the ceiling fans squeaked, and the scent of burnt bacon lingered in the air. But none of that mattered. Her mind was racing. The digital web she was building had Jack Kessler at its center, and from him, the branches were already reaching outward. Sheriff Annabelle Caraway, county budget committees, local K-9 funding grants with red flags. Above the counter, a TV played the local news. A voice broke through the diner hum. We have developing footage from a Missouri rest stop. The clip aired. A blurry video. A woman kicked down. The officer's cold voice. A sickening thud. No name. No badge. Just pain and silence. The diner went still. The waitress stopped pouring coffee midstream. A man at the counter froze, spoon halfway to his mouth. Leticia didn't move, but she saw it. The crack. The first one. Not in the system, but in the public's armor of denial. Outside, the clouds began to shift. Rain was coming, and so was she. The rain fell hard as Leticia pulled into the lot of a rundown roadside motel, the kind that advertised color TV and vacancy in flickering neon. Her black SUV was gone. What remained was a scorched patch of concrete, blackened like a scar. The flames had erased everything. Her laptop, her gear, her safe compartment under the rear floorboard. everything. Except her resolve, she had expected retaliation. But not this fast, not this loud, and certainly not this personal. A thin sheet of cardboard, still damp from the rain, had been tucked beneath the wiper of a rusted truck nearby. 3 words in thick, trembling black ink. "Stay in your lane." Leticia stared at it for a full 10 seconds. Not because she was afraid, but because the message confirmed everything she already suspected. This wasn't about a rogue cop or a single county. This was a firewall built to protect power, now showing its cracks. Inside her motel room, drawers were ransacked, the mattress shredded. But what stung most was the missing photo, the only printed memory of her 2011 task force, the operation that nearly cost Leon his life, and where she'd first learned what loyalty meant when you're surrounded by wolves. That picture wasn't taken for nostalgia. It was proof they'd bled for something that mattered. Now it was gone, stolen not just to scare her, but to erase her place in the story. Leticia didn't call it in. No report. No scene. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of watching her scramble. Instead, she composed a message to the one person inside the bureau who still believed in her. "I accept the suspension. No further contact." 48 hours off-grid. With that, she slid her encrypted phone under a folded towel and opened the emergency cash packet hidden beneath her shoe sole. She dressed in layered clothes, pocketed the SD card and backup USB, and took the motel's forgotten sedan sun-faded, with the cough of an engine and a cassette player stuck on static. It was perfect. By the time she reached the outskirts of Elmsbury, the courthouse was already surrounded, not by cops. By ghosts, a stone building long abandoned. The courthouse looked more like a mausoleum than a hall of justice. Its steps were cracked, its doors faded by time, and the surrounding trees had grown wild and heavy, like nature was trying to hide what once happened inside. It was the perfect place for a trap. Leticia and Leon had leaked a message onto encrypted far-right channels just hours before. FBI whistleblower meeting Dodge agent with evidence on Caraway. Must not happen. The bait was irresistible. Leticia watched from a high floor, face lit only by the faint glow of an auxiliary monitor. The evidence bag below was a decoy, just blank papers and a wiped drive, but it was convincing enough for the kind of men who operated in silence, loyal not to a badge, but to a code. Protect your own. Destroy the rest. 83:29 p.m. They arrived. One SUV. Then a second. Plates hidden. Faces obscured. Weapons concealed but obvious. "Wait," Leon whispered in her ear through the comm. "They're scanning the room. Don't move." And then, just like that, floodlights burst through the windows. No sirens. No shouting. Just a silent takedown. A ballet of justice. One pistol hit the ground. One man tackled. Another cuffed with such speed it looked choreographed. Leticia watched it all without moving, not in celebration, but with purpose, because for once, the camera didn't catch a woman being kicked down. It captured the men who thought they were untouchable. Falling. Later, as Leon emerged from the building's shadow and gave a silent nod to the cameras, Leticia stood alone on the crumbling stairwell. The courthouse, once a symbol of silence, had just become the setting of a reckoning, and this time it was their story being written, not hers. By morning, the courthouse sting operation had already made its way through encrypted channels, whistleblower forums, and underground civil rights groups. But it wasn't until a single clip Leticia, stepping down the courthouse stairs in the rain, face steady, shoulders square, hit the public timeline that everything shifted. The internet exploded, not with outrage, but with clarity. That clip, just 17 seconds long, was reposted over 1 million times in under 6 hours. It wasn't dramatized. No music. No Zoom. Just raw footage of a woman who had refused to be erased, and it sent a message louder than any headline. She's not hiding anymore, at the same time. The public was already rallying. What started as a whisper campaign turned into the Justice Station, a full-scale citizen-led movement that took over Benton's city square. By noon, the folding tables were up. By sunset, it was a sea of handwritten signs, audio recorders, and families telling the stories they were never allowed to tell. A young black boy spoke of being made to kneel during a traffic stop for fitting a description. A war veteran shared how he lost his pension for filming his commanding officer using a racial slur. A mother held up a faded photograph and whispered, "He never came back from that cell." Leticia didn't stand on a podium. She moved quietly through the crowd, listening, recording, cataloging pain. She wore no badge, no title, just a coat that still carried the smell of scorched rubber and justice not yet done. But then came the blow meant to end it all. She had just stepped away from a group of students when the unmarked cruisers rolled up behind City Hall. 3 officers moved fast, no warning, no announcement. In seconds, Leticia was cuffed. The charge? Unauthorized access to federal systems. Disclosure of classified information. The crowd gasped, and then they roared. One voice rang out, "Justice for Leticia." Then another. Then hundreds. The chant rose, not like a protest, but like an oath. Inside the cruiser, Leticia sat still. She didn't resist. She didn't speak. But her caller mic was live. Every word, every moment was streaming in real time to Leon's off-grid command center. But what none of them expected would change the entire game came minutes later from within the FBI's own secure network. An internal whistleblower dropped a bombshell. The Grayson directives, dozens of emails, contracts, orders, proof that Senator Everett Grayson had ordered the suppression of misconduct complaints, proof that Caraway had buried brutality cases to protect state funding, proof that Jack Kessler's incident wasn't isolated, it was policy. The leak ignited a firestorm. Leticia's arrest became the final straw. The hashtag Free Leticia hashtag surged to #1 globally. Civil rights attorneys filed for her immediate release. The ACLU deployed observers to Crawford County. And in under 24 hours, the same system that had tried to silence her was on trial in the public square. By morning, the Attorney General's office issued 3 simultaneous arrest warrants for Jack Kessler, Sheriff Caraway, and Everett Grayson. The unbreakable triangle of abuse had collapsed. In court weeks later, Leticia didn't speak. She didn't testify. She didn't need to. Her presence was the proof. Kessler got 18 years. Caraway, 14. Grayson, once the architect of a self-protecting empire, was sentenced to 25 years without clemency. And when the judge closed the trial with the words, "The greater crime lies not in the act, but in the belief no one would name it," the courtroom turned not to the guilty, but to Leticia. She stood, slowly, quietly, and lifted one hand, palm open, to the crowd. It wasn't a fist. It wasn't a wave. It was a promise. I'm still here. And I did not bow. That image became the symbol of a new movement. They put it on shirts, murals, even classroom walls. But Leticia, she went back to work. Not as a special agent, not as an investigator, but as a woman who refused to let silence win. She launched a nonprofit, Silent No More, training citizens to gather evidence, report corruption, and navigate a system stacked against them. She built curriculum for law enforcement academies. She gave lectures, quiet ones, off stage, at eye level. And when the Ward report her personal account of the system's rot and the blueprint to rebuild it hit 2 million downloads in a week. She didn't celebrate. She just underlined a sentence in red: justice isn't a destination. It's a process of refusing to look away. 1 year after the trial, she sat in the 6th row of a human rights festival, watching a young man take the stage. Colby Renshaw, the boy who hit record that day by the vending machine. He stood tall, spoke steady. "I'm not a hero," he said, "but I saw a woman stand up. And I knew I couldn't walk away." Leticia didn't cry. She nodded once, that was all, because in the end, she never asked for a spotlight. She just made sure the next generation didn't have to wait for permission to shine, and in that truth, she built something no system could erase.